So we just got the finale for The Last Kingdom. It came in the form of a movie. I've got some thoughts on it, so let's get into it. Okay, so we just got the finale movie for The Last Kingdom. So The Last Kingdom, 7 Kings Must Die is the name of the film. Netflix decided to conclude this series with a film. And unlike previous reviews where I tend to go through what I like, what I didn't like, there's so much more context in this one, especially covering a show that has multiple seasons, now converted into some form of a movie. And this is also going to be a spoiler review because it's actually really hard to touch on any of the important aspects of what happened with this, especially since it's a series finale, without going into spoilers. I just didn't feel like there was a point to it, talking around all the various plot points and still trying to piece some sort of a review together. So, what do I think of this final movie? I think it did a lot of things well. I think there's a lot of good here. The best thing I think about this is it wraps up this world appropriately. It finishes everything off on the note that you would expect. That gives the audience satisfaction, makes them feel good about how this world concluded. How this movie actually was constructed and put together, and the viewing experience, I'm kind of varied on that. I kind of have some mixed feelings on that. But the final result was what we needed. The final result made sense, and I think was very satisfactory for the audience. So I will get into that first. I guess we are kind of dividing up what I like, what I didn't like. Basically, the film starts out, and this was kind of shocking, and King Edward's dead. He's gone. So this is the start of the spoilers.
Sorry, so my dog started barking completely uncontrollably, but now we're back into it. So like I said, King Edward, he's dead, like just to start with. And so they lead off with that. So there's the entire issue now of succession of the throne. We have all these different children that the king has had with different people, some off the books, some on the books. And so now we've got this big problem. Uhtred in the previous seasons, or I guess in the previous season, with the illegitimate child of Alfred or Edward, I should say, dealing with that and his true, lineage to the throne, and the different people from the other side of the family trying to leverage that. That was kind of all in the previous season. And so it was interesting to me that they just sort of skipped past, like they just decided that Edward was dead, and maybe that's historically accurate. I'm not sure. It seems the show takes enough historical liberties that felt like an interesting choice, since Edward was such a prominent character, especially in the last few seasons, and he's not really even involved in this one at all. Of course, in the previous season, him and Uhtred worked together to restore, Northumbria and things like that against the Scottish advances. So he did have sort of that conclusion, but it did feel a bit out of place that he's just all of a sudden sort of out of the picture. So now they have this line of succession issue. Who's going to take the throne? And Uhtred is sort of almost reluctantly roped back into this thing to try and settle this, because now we have another Viking lord, and he's getting together with the Scottish people and these other kings who have questions over this and what's going to happen if Ethelwald becomes king, and what he's going to do in his dream to try and unite all of England together, and what that's going to mean. So there's a lot of interesting political dynamics shaping out here with like I said, Uhtred kind of caught in the middle here, him trying to protect his people, but also maintain his oath that he has brought about over the different seasons that he's been a part of this. So there has been that issue, and I think maybe my biggest problem with this finale is there were so many good things that I would have loved to see in a season. And so it's not necessarily like a criticism of this movie in its form, right? I'm more just frustrated that we didn't get a full season of this, because there's so many interesting things that I think we could have explored. The building of the alliance, I think, would have been a great season-long plot line. Uhtred, now that he finally has Bevembert, he's been working the whole show to finally get there, and that's his birthright, right? And that's like the beginning of the show, he's got to leave, and so it's like he's worked his whole life to get there, and now he has to leave, and so it feels a bit strange to me at times, because we just didn't get a lot of time of him finally accomplishing that goal. And a lot of this season, or not this season, but this movie feels like it buzzes past so many potential plot points. Like, I feel like they had plot points written out on storyboard for a show. Like, we want to do all these things over the course of a 6-episode season. And then when it was finally time to do the movie, they just sort of opted to fast forward through all of these different plot points. And so that was a bit of an interesting choice. I think I would have liked it if they maybe narrowed it down to a few and did less montaging and jumping from one location to another to give us a little more of a focused narrative. I think would have helped. I mean, The Last Kingdom's always been a very brisk show pacing wise. It just goes, and I think that's part of the fun of it. But in this case, there was just a little too much just blurring past things, not being able to take time to, settle into things and settle into different character moments. It's like, okay, we don't really have time to do this. We got to get to the next thing. We got to get to the next thing, and we got to get to this scene, and then we're here. And I think almost like Game of Thrones in a sense, but not completely. In The Last Kingdom, it's sort of established that like travel takes a bit of time. Right, you can't just bop from one end of England to another in an entire episode unless there's an obvious time jump, right? But people are going all over the place, and so obviously they did that for the purposes of the movie. But then again, it's like in terms of how it fits with the rest of the Last Kingdom catalog, it's like it's kind of feels a bit out of place in that sense. But like I said, I understand that they tried to do the best they could with the constraints that were given with this film, and I think with that was pretty impressive. There's also a pretty impressive battle at the end of this movie where they have to pull off some pretty crazy tactics once again. And then you go back to season 1 of Uhtred pulling off the crazy tactics with Alfred to restore Wessex, and he pulls some crazy maneuvers, right? So he's always been sort of presupposed as this master of battle or this master military strategist as well. And so you get to see those facets of him in this final episode. But let's really kind of dive into the conclusion and how this thing ends up. And so they get to the final battle, and with the current King of Wessex and Uhtred and his people, they're able to fend off the 7 kings that have united with the newest Viking raider, which we don't get a lot of information on him, I guess, but he does have a couple sons. Like I said, there's just so much that would have been great throughout a season, especially the character who befriends the King of Wessex. This gave me my name. There's so many Ethel characters in this show. I think it's not Ethelhelm, but Ethelstan, right? Ethelstan. So he befriends him, and they develop a bit of a relationship. And I think that would have been fun to see play out all throughout the season. But anyways, they get to this final battle, and Uhtred's able to pull off a maneuver. They do a little pinch maneuver. They're able to defeat this army. Basically, all the sons of the kings die in this battle, and they finally retreat. It's over. England has been restored essentially. And so the show finished out. Uhtred is basically mortally wounded in battle at this point. He gets stuck pretty bad there, and he's taken back to Bevernburg finally. And for the last 10 minutes or so of the show, he's basically on his deathbed. And I really think this was like the best way to end the show, in terms of they don't really necessarily straight up show his death, right? They don't necessarily see him on his last legs and die. Like, we get so many like excruciating season-long deaths for some of these characters in The Last Kingdom. It was almost a form of a meta ending, not quite, but basically they see him, he kind of walks into Valhalla and sees Canute and all these people, and his brother and his adopted family in Valhalla like he imagined it, or like has sort of been portrayed in the lore of the show. And so they kind of leave it on the high note of like, yeah, you didn't actually see him die, but like it's presumed that he's going to die, but then you get to see him sort of walk into Valhalla and sort of live out whatever the fantasy is for that, or his final death scene or whatever. So I think that was a good way to do it. I think you could have had him straight up die in battle. I don't think that would have been satisfactory. I do think this was the best, most satisfactory way. Like, he sees Brita there, and they're all eating and feasting and things like that, and I think that's a very satisfying ending for him, right? Because he had this lifelong goal of getting his birthright back, but there's so much loss along the way, and really he lost so many people along the way. And so to finally have him see that, I think is very satisfying for the watcher who's been following this character through so many seasons. And they just didn't really have time to settle into endings for like all the other characters and Father Pula, because like there's not a lot of like main characters left at this point of the show. So many of them have died, like I said. So really good job there with that ending. Overall, I mean, I'm gonna give this Last Kingdom movie a B. I liked it. I I think, like I said, they did the best with the constraints, but I would have loved to see this be a full season instead, but they did the best with what they have. So in a comment down below, let me know what you think about this Last Kingdom movie. Like I said, this is more of an off-the-cuff review sort of thing, but I hope you enjoyed it. Anyways, you should like and subscribe to the channel. We got lots of good stuff coming, and I'll see you guys next time.